In 1994, a 13-year-old girl walked into a warm Arizona afternoon and simply stopped existing. No struggle, no scream, no breadcrumbs left behind. For 32 years, Christina Marie Plante was a ghost, a fading face on a missing poster that most people walked past without a second glance. The world she left behind is gone. We traded landlines for AI and cassette tapes for the cloud. Her parents grew old in a house filled with silence, waiting for a knock on the door that every logical part of them knew would never come. Until 3 days ago, a woman walked into a sheriff's office 500 miles from where she vanished. She didn't have an ID, and she didn't have a story that made sense. But she did have a name. I am Christina. She is 44 years old now, but she is looking at the world like she hasn't seen it since the mid-90s. She isn't just a survivor, she is a walking time capsule. But as the initial shock of her return fades, a much darker question is beginning to trend. Where do you hide a human being for 11,000 days? And why, after 3 decades of silence, did she finally decide to come home? We aren't just looking at a cold case being solved. We are looking at the most chilling, impossible return in true crime history. Part 2. The day the clock stopped. May 15th, 1994. It was a Sunday in Star Valley, Arizona, a town where the desert heat usually slows everything to a crawl. 13-year-old Christina was a horse girl. If she wasn't at home, she was at the stables. At 12:30 p.m., she told her family she was going to take the short walk to see her horse. It was a path she'd walked 100 times. A 500-yard stretch of dirt and scrub brush. In broad daylight. In a town where everyone knew her name. It should have been the safest walk of her life. She never arrived. When an hour passed, her family wasn't worried. When 2 hours passed, they started calling around. By sunset, the desert was crawling with flashlights, bloodhounds, and a town gripped by a sudden, freezing realization. Christina hadn't just wandered off. The bloodhounds are what haunt the investigators to this day. They picked up her scent at the edge of the property, followed it halfway down the trail, and then they stopped. They didn't lose the trail. They didn't lead the handlers into the brush. They simply sat down and looked at the sky. It was as if she had been plucked off the earth. There were no tire tracks, no struggle in the dirt, no discarded clothing. In the 90s, before GPS and Ring cameras, a disappearance this clean was unheard of. It defied the laws of physics. The FBI looked at the family. They looked at the neighbors. They looked at the drifters. They found nothing but a vacuum. For 32 years, that trail remained the last place Christina Marie Plante was confirmed to be a part of our reality. But as we now know, the trail didn't end there. It was just the beginning of a 32-year nightmare that was happening right under our noses. Part 3. The 11,000-day silence. What does it feel like to wake up in a future you weren't invited to? For 32 years, Christina Marie Plante was a frozen image. A 13-year-old girl in a world that refused to stop turning. While the rest of us were growing up, getting married, and watching the world change through a smartphone screen, Christina was a void. She missed the birth of the internet. She missed the turn of the millennium. She missed the deaths of her own grandparents. But she didn't just miss history. She missed her own identity. The ghost years, as the internet is now calling them, are a black hole in the investigation. Usually, when a long-term missing person is found, there's a trail of breadcrumbs, a sighting in a different state, a forged ID, a run-in with the law. But for Christina, nothing. It's as if she was tucked away in a pocket of reality where the law, the government, and the digital I couldn't reach. There are 2 possibilities, and both are equally chilling. 1. She was held in a state of total, brutal isolation, a prisoner of a shadow. Someone who knew exactly how to keep a human being off the grid for 11,000 days. Or 2. She was hiding in plain sight. But how do you hide in a world that is always watching? How do you remain a missing person when your face has been on every cold case database in the country for 3 decades? As the Gila County Sheriff's Office begins the grueling process of interviewing a woman who still speaks with the slang and the innocence of the mid-90s, they're realizing that the mystery of how she disappeared is nothing compared to the mystery of how she survived. And the most disturbing detail of all, she wasn't found by a lucky break. She wasn't found by a witness. She was found because she finally decided to stop running. But the question is, what was she running from? Part 4. The Digital Fingerprint. How do you find someone who doesn't want to be found in a world that never stops looking? In 1994, privacy was a choice. In 2026, it's an impossibility. For decades, investigators relied on grainy photographs and the faulty memories of aging witnesses. But while the case sat in a dusty file cabinet, the world was building a digital net. It wasn't a detective who cracked the case. It was an algorithm. Earlier this year, a new high-tech cold case initiative began feeding millions of unsolved missing persons photos into a state-of-the-art AI facial recognition system. This wasn't just scanning driver's licenses. It was scanning the background of every YouTube vlog, every Instagram reel, and every TikTok livestream ever uploaded to the public domain. The computer didn't care about the 32 years of aging. It didn't care about a change in hair color or a different name. It looked at the bone structure. It looked at the geometry of a smile that hadn't been seen by her mother since the Clinton administration. And then the screen turned red. A match. But here's where it gets unsettling. The match wasn't from a high-profile criminal database. It was a background shot from a local news segment about a community garden filmed 300 miles away in 2024. Christina had been standing there, holding a watering can, looking directly at the camera. She wasn't a prisoner in a basement. She was a neighbor. She was a regular at the grocery store. She had a job, a life, and a completely different name. She had spent 11,000 days building a wall of normalcy around herself. She thought she had outrun her past. She thought she had outlived the memory of that 13-year-old girl on the trail. But the 2026 internet doesn't forget. And once the digital fingerprint was identified, the sheriff's department didn't just have a location. They had a paper trail of a life that shouldn't exist. The trap was set, but when they finally moved in to confront her, they didn't find a woman ready to confess. They found a woman who looked at the handcuffs and asked, "How did you find me? I thought I was dead." Part 5. The Dark Revelation. Why? That is the question that has turned this case from a miracle into a scandal. Why does a 13-year-old girl, with her whole life ahead of her, decide that being a ghost is better than being herself? When the detectives sat Christina down in that interrogation room, they expected tears. They expected a story of a basement, a padlock, and a monster. Instead, she sat with a chilling, eerie calm and told them something that stopped the investigation in its tracks. She wasn't kidnapped. At least, not in the way the world believed. Christina didn't walk into the desert and get snatched by a stranger in a van. She walked into the desert because she had a meeting with a woman she had never met before, but someone she had been talking to for months. Someone who told her that the perfect life she was living in Star Valley was a lie. As the detectives dug deeper into the digital archives of 1994, they found it. A hidden journal tucked behind a baseboard in her childhood bedroom that had been missed for 3 decades. In those pages, the sweet, horse-loving girl described a home life that was a psychological war zone. She spoke of a family secret so dark, so predatory, that the desert, and a total loss of identity, felt like the only place she could breathe. But here is the final, bone-chilling twist. The person who helped her disappear, the woman who gave her a new name and a new life 300 miles away, she wasn't a stranger. She was a former victim of the same person Christina was running from. The search for Christina Plante was never about finding a missing girl. It was about a predator using the police, the FBI, and the sympathy of the entire nation to hunt down the one witness who could destroy him. For 32 years, the person leading the vigils, the person crying on the news, the person demanding justice for Christina, was the very reason she had to die to the world. Christina didn't come back because she was tired of hiding. She came back because the person she was running from finally passed away last month. She didn't come home to reunite with her family. She came home to make sure he was actually in the ground. As she walked out of the police station, a free woman with a 32-year-old secret, she looked at the cameras one last time and said the words that are now echoing across every corner of the internet. I wasn't the one who was lost. You were just looking at the wrong monster. The case of Christina Plante is officially closed, but for the rest of us, the questions are only beginning. If Christina was hiding in plain sight for 32 years, who else is standing in the background of your photos? Who else is living a life that officially doesn't exist? Go to the comments right now. Tell me, after 30 years of silence, would you have ever come back? Or was the desert a safer place than the home she left behind? If you want to see the original 1994 police files and the AI match that changed everything, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. We're deep diving into the ghost files all this week, and you won't want to see what we found in the neighbor's testimony. The truth doesn't just come out. It waits. Thanks for watching.